Insight64. You know, the horse has a rope, a piece of bar, metal bar here, and connected with ropes around, and they call that a rein. Okay, the rope around its the mouth and neck area. Okay, so rein also means to put put. It's also a verb to put under control. Yeah. Okay. So rein in your mind. Let's pull it under your control. Regulate inflow of data of other things that may not be damaging as damaging, but nonetheless still chaotic. For example, right now I'm sitting here, cars go by. And I really don't like it, but you know, I don't have little choice, but that's why I'm recording the video in this circumstance. But anyway, so cars go by and they make, even though there's not, you know, like really damaging my ears, nonetheless I'm aware that it's not peaceful, you know, it's not calm. You know, it's like going by, always having this noise, you know, it's going by, and you know, I don't like that. I like the quietness, you know. So, me knowing this, I try not to focus on it too much, because if I focus on it too much, it's gonna, you know, affect my mind. So I'm gonna regulate. I'm not gonna focus on it. I'm gonna disallow it. Its entry into me, into my mind, by lessening the focus. So even though my ear actually hears the data coming in, and my mind is aware of it, nonetheless I shift my focus from it to something else. So I don't really focus on it too much. So therefore it doesn't disturb me that much. You see, okay? So you do not put yourself in a purely receiving mode. So notice I'm talking to you. Because I'm talking to you, I'm not concerned too much about the outside noise. It's not getting to me that much, because I'm not focused on that. I'm not in a purely receiving mode. I'm also sending. Also, if I was not sending, I would be doing something else, or sitting there relaxing and being this state of peace, enjoying the peace within. Not really focused on the sounds. Rather, filter the data by regulating what your mind is exposed to. You know, you have to become master of your senses. You know, you have to become a master of your senses. Be cautious. Guard what your mind is being exposed to. Regulate the inflow of data. You know what regulate means, right? Means like when there's a lot of water coming, it's going to wash you away. You create something so that the water is, when it gets to you, it's slowed down. Let's say they put rocks in front of it and slows it down so that when it gets to you, it's at a very comfortable level. You can handle this water for swimming, for drinking, whatever. So regulate means to again, put it under your control so that you can manage it. So, rein in your mind and regulate the inflow of data. Stop your mind from receiving data with your will. Do not put yourself in a purely receiving mode. Rather, filter the data by regulating what your mind is exposed to. Be cautious and guard what your mind is being exposed to. So you gotta rein in your mind. You can't have your mind like a little kid, like, you know, all consuming, watching everything and ears wide open, and lose yourself in the world outside. You know, rein in your mind, pull your mind in, under your control. Be established in yourself. You gotta regulate the inflow of data. Data is coming, all sorts of data is coming. You can't just take it in and be in a receiving mode. Stop your mind from receiving data with your will. How do you do that? By do not put yourself in a purely receiving mode. You know. Have you noticed that sometimes when you talk to somebody, you're not really listening to the other person. You're not in a receiving mode. And when they stop talking, you just blurt out what you want to say. You're in a sending mode. Whatever is the opposite of receiving. You're giving. So that's the modes you're in. A type of mode which is you're receiving, or you're giving back, or you're sending, or you're being active. So do not put yourself in a purely receiving mode. Don't allow yourself to simply just take it all in. A purely receiving mode. No, you're not supposed to be like that. No. You want your mind to be under your control. You can't allow your mind to just say, hey, open door policy, everything come in, all the flow of info of data. Just like your house. You have a house or you have a room. You're not going to leave your room open and invite everybody to come in, do whatever they want to it. No. Same with your mind. The same. Your mind, you cannot allow any and everything to just come in anytime. No. Small example for that. Let's say you have sometimes the siren of a police car or ambulance comes by. Sometimes the sound is quite screechingly loud. Or let's say you're in a place where they're conducting the fire drills, and the fire drill comes on and it's very loud bell noise. Or you're in other circumstances where some loud, obnoxious noise comes, and it's physically hurting your ears, so you go like this, you put your hands on your ears because you just can't handle the amount of large, loud sound it has, What are you doing? The sound is too much, you notice, and you go, because physically damaging your ears, you can damage your ears, right? The same is true with inflow of data. I remember once I was at a place, and this person was asking me a question. I was at a job. I was behind the cash register, and anyway, so the lady asked me about this certain flyer that was there, and I said, "Oh, this flyer is about this person," and I was trying to. Then I stopped and tried to think of myself of how I'm going to phrase my next sentence about this person, because the person is involved in quite a lot of stuff, and I was trying to figure out how to form my sentence to say it more clearly, in a clear and brief, concise manner to the person. I just took just a very short pause, not even 2 seconds long yet, and the person, not even 1 second pause yet, and then the person quickly interrupts and says, "Well, that doesn't say much." In other words, the person said, "What's this about?" Then I said, "This is this person," and I was taking just a pause to think of how to elaborate more on this person. The person says, "Well, that doesn't say much." And I said, "Oh my God, okay, this is a person that is interrupting and is not does not understand that requires time to think of how to say what I want to say." So I said, "Well, I have to be even more cautious of how I interact with this person." Anyway, to brief you, so I was sitting behind the counter, and eventually she goes, "Are you going to tell me about this?" The flyer, pointing it to me, she has the flyer, waving it in front of my face. And I looked at the situation, I said that, and I analyzed it. Now I realized she's saying it very kind of loud, and in a very disruptive, chaotic manner. In other words, it's not pleasant, it's quite negative. And I had physically turned my head because I didn't want to have her sight come into my brain. Her loud voice I was also diffusing by not really listening to it. I was turning my head away to not hear it. And when I thought about the situation, I said to her, this was my response. I said, "No." She said, "Are you going to tell me about this?" And I thought about it. Then I said, "No." So I said, you're using language which is seems okay, but the way you're saying it is I forgot exactly what I said, but I said either rude or disruptive or something like that. So you gotta be cautious on guard. That's the looking away and turning your ears away so it doesn't affect your mind. Because you want to remain objective, unbiased, without bias, conscious and aware, not under the influence of what data that is coming into you. Because if the data does come into you, and it's possible that you'll be affected quite strongly. You might get mad, you might get upset. I was not upset. I was collected, and I just didn't like to engage with this person, so I said no. Yes, like that. Okay, good. Okay, we're on to insight65. When sexually aroused, there might be a shift in your consciousness regarding people and life in general. It is a mental shift. All right. So here we're going into detail about how this actually happens. When sexually aroused, the mind's attention is greatly focused on the sense of pleasure. This, as we noted, is both a physical sensation as well as a mental, double whammy. So, as you know, there's several reasons for this. One of which is the nerve endings of the genitals. There's many. They're sensitive. That's two. It's a rare experience. Three. You got the mental side of it, which is the contrasts that are also numerous contrasts. Each of them quite large, significant. So all this bombards the mind, and the mind grabbing the mind's attention quite strongly, thus forming its reality, because the mind is aware of that reality quite strongly. That's where the shift in reality comes, because one minute you're living your daily life, regular life, next minute the attention is powerfully grabbed by all these series of things onto this reality of pleasure, and now the reality now is this, the reality of this pleasure. My mind has shifted its mentality of reality now. A shift in your consciousness. Your mind draws its concept of what is real from its bodily pleasure, because that is the reality that is overwhelmingly asserting itself on the mind. Not only the bodily pleasure, but also the mental tricks that are applied in the mind. At that moment, almost everything in the universe will be a subheading under the heading of pleasure. Meaning, pleasure will be the most significant reality, and anything else will be looked on as secondary. This is true simply because you are not aware of the significance of the other realities, as much as your mind is aware of the significance and potency of the sexual feelings. You might lose sight of many normal relationships and the place they hold in your life, and start to look on them as having or not having the potential to provide you pleasure. Very simple. We talked about this long ago, and we'll go into the details now. Insight66. View the person anew. It's a short thing, but very, very important. Basically, this is saying you want to live a real, conscious, and aware life, right? So when you go out and you're meeting a person that you've known before or you're getting to know now, let's take an example of the person that you're interacting with and you've known for a while. Now, every time you go with this person now, try to see the reality of the situation. The reality of you, the reality of her or him, or whoever it is, and the reality of your relationship at that moment. You want to be aware of the realness of the situation, meaning don't go and live a habitual life thinking about, oh, we are like this, our relationship is like this. So be aware of the situation here and now. What is really going on here, you know? I'm going to read a little bit. I recommend you, of course, reading all the explanations. Yeah, I'm going to read one when, have the book and read it. Here's a sentence. Let us experience, see, learn, and understand the complete person as a whole, as who they are, and to know them without bias as much as we can. So what I mean by that is for you to be sober and clear-minded, meaning your mind to be aware when interacting with your partner, in order to not categorize the experience according to what society and some other sources have presented to you. See, what I'm basically saying is a tendency for people to live an unconscious life, to live life as others have determined for them. Even the definition of things that they're involved in. They start to define it according to what others have defined as. They're not having a real experience here and now. And so that's what I'm encouraging you to get involved in. You are live being, and you're very conscious. You have the ability to be very conscious. You have so many wants, desires. I'm trying to say you're a very complex being of all sorts. And so is your partner, and also your relationship with each other. It's a very complex thing. It's not static. It's evolving and growing, and you don't want to categorize your interaction with your partner as what others have presented as, oh yeah, this is what that is. No, it is what it is right here. I try to experience that. It's very complex. It's very hard to say, oh, well, it's categorized according to that. No, it's a very complex thing. Even one individual is very hard to analyze and put into category, and very much less we're able to categorize a relationship between two complex beings. So be aware and alive and conscious of the experience that you're here and having here and now. as we said earlier in the other insights, that you're a very complex being. The other person is complex. You're not likely to connect on many levels. So it's up to you to get together and really swap, interchange, relate to each other about, communicate what are you thinking, what are you feeling on so many levels, and what is he is feeling and thinking, and to swap stories, swap perspectives, try to understand each other, because you have to understand that you're very complex, very different. Your actions, you may do an action that the other person will misunderstand, because your actions have, she or he may draw conclusions from these actions, when in fact you didn't have any intention to mean that. What your action meant is, to them, is something different than what you meant. You know, you're complex and completely different beings. So you need to communicate and learn from each other. What's going on with you? What am I? What are you like? You know, and in order to really learn, you have to be alive, conscious, and aware. It's like swimming with dolphins, you know, or swimming in the sea, and you come across this new species or old species, whatever, but you just don't know how they're going to react. So you're very conscious and aware how you're going to interact with this person and what it means, you know, this sea creature. Well, that's what we are. We're so complex. We are very complex, and you want to get to learn about each other, and you have to be very cautious and aware. Insight number 67. Make conscious efforts to think and act your purest, truest self. If you act otherwise, be conscious of that fact, and admit to yourself that the action was not your purest, truest form of your self-expression. So basically, I'm saying that you want to be able to interact with people with your highest, noblest concept of yourself. Why would you want to use something lower? Be conscious to interact with them, to do it naturally and appropriately in regard to person, time, place, circumstance, and event. Why? It's about having a quality, living, experiencing and living a quality of life. You know, it's like you have a friend, and this friend could deal with you in a very quality way, which they're capable of, or lowly. Why would they want to act lowly? No, when they have the ability to behave with you in very, very stupendous way, a really fantastic way, you know, top-notch, fantastic way. Why would you want to interact with anybody else lower? No, you want to interact and have a really quality experience, to give them a quality experience, you know, and you feel good about yourself too. Wow. Okay. Okay, Insight 68. I'll read it, then I'll explain. Method 1. While trying to determine the solution to sexual fixation, often one succumbs to the influences of such sexual fixations. If solution is not being found, and the negative influences are going to be inflicting serious or irreversible damage, then the student can, for the purpose of self-preservation, stop all manner of thinking. Later in life, when one again has a chance of looking into the matter, one can take up the search again. So here, I'm explaining how if you are, if you notice that you're damaging yourself in a very serious way, or you're in serious trouble of some sorts because of the sexual fixation. Not only for yourself, but for others as well. If you're damaging others, in essence, it's damaging yourself as well. So if you're causing great harm to yourself or to others, meaning you see the potential of it happening, then you want to not focus on trying to solve sexual fixation or sexual addiction, because while you focus on it, you will be influenced by it and engage in it. And so you want to avoid that, because you want to avoid the great injuries, the great dangers for yourself and for others. So what you do, you stop all thinking. This insight goes into extensive detail about how you do that, and it gives a personal example of it in my own life, from my own life, and it's a matter of self-preservation. You're not finding the solution. You don't have the solution, you're not finding the solution, you find that you focus on it, it really overcomes you, and you're going to get yourself into really bad trouble. If you see that happening, you want to stop and disengage from anything sexual, just any thoughts on all this stuff, and just survive. It's a matter of your survival. So because of that, you abandon all, you just turn away from it, saying, look, this is going to kill me, this is going to damage me in a big way, or this is going to damage somebody else in a big way. I'm going to stop this nonsense, and I'm going to just not think. And when you are determined to preserve yourself, like survival, then you can avoid being influenced simply by not thinking it, by not thinking of it, by not engaging it in any sort of way. You just turn the other way, and you just focus on this one task of preserving, self-preservation, surviving, remaining balanced. You have to do this, because if you are going to damage yourself as not damage somebody else, it's going to mean serious trouble for you, very serious trouble for you, and you want to avoid that. So I recommend this for people who see themselves as are going to cause damage to themselves or others. They have to do this out of self-preservation. And I'm going to give you an example of how not to think. How do you do this? Well, your focus is on survival. That's what your focus will be. Your focus will be survival. In order to survive, you're going to have to do this. So you do that. So you stop thinking. Any influences come, you stop thinking about them. Because why? Because you have to survive. Yeah? I give an example of how when you fall asleep, often you turn your mind off and you just drift off, sleep. I'm sure you find some example in your life, some instance, where you let go and you don't think. If you examine your life, you'll find some place where you actually abandon thinking. You let go, and you don't think. So I want you to be aware of that and see what you do, become aware of what you do mentally when you do that, when you decide to not think. What do you actually do? And do that same thing in everyday life regarding anything sexual. You just gotta apply that method that you're familiar with, and what technique you use to not think in that particular instance that you do not think, and use it for sexual instances. And just abandon it. You don't want to get yourself muddied and mixed up with all the sexual stuff, which is gonna bother the heck out of you and mess up your life in a big way. And so you're gonna treat it by not dealing with it, because at the moment you can't deal with it. You're gonna damage yourself because you cannot deal with it at the moment. You don't deal with it. You put it on the back burner. You put it aside on the shelf. You just don't let it into your mind, using the technique that you already know I'm sure you use it in some, more than likely you use it in some part of your life where you already have quite a lot of practice using not thinking. For me, it was when I slept. When I slept, I just go, drift off to sleep, Often you find that it's easy to control the mind by focusing it on other things, other matters that you get engaged in. This is an easy way to get active with something else rather than getting involved with any bad influences, negative sexual influences. Just get involved with something else, get your mind busy and focus on that other thing. You might find that some of you have this non-thinking attitude when you go on vacation. Maybe you go to Hawaii or some other foreign country, and your mind is carefree. And you engage in just being and relaxing in the state of mind that you're thinking possibly is peace, or you'll enjoy the freedom of having no obligations or bills to pay or different things. You just shut it out of your mind and go on doing what you want to do. And so this frivolous, relaxed attitude that you use, that you adopt at that moment, that you willingly go into yourself, you can use that same method, what you do mentally, in other areas of your life. When it comes to sexual influences coming to bug the hell out of you, you have to let go and focus on, as if you're on vacation. Some of you could be a health club. If you go to a health club or a spa or golfing, a lot of people go golfing because not only because of the ball hitting, it's also the whole experience of being in that green, wide, open space. It does something to you mentally. It's like a Zen experience. Again, the mind is focused on these green pastures and open fields, and it reflects on the mind. It imposes itself on the mind in a state of the same similar state of calm within. What you see on the outside, you experience within. You could go to a park, same thing. Some people go fishing, and with a buddy they go fishing, or by themselves they go fishing. And it's not all about the fish catching, but rather, I remember a program, there's two guys talking about fishing, and one of them said to the other, some of the best fishing days I've had, I've never caught didn't catch a fish. One of the best experiences was just being, so basically what he's saying is he was in that space of calm relaxation, the water, it does something to you. You're out in the forest, in the open nature, and you become it. It becomes you. It leaves its imprint on your mind. You become calm and relaxed. So use any method that you find that it works for you, that you're used to calm your mind, and remain in that state. Remain in that state. So that you're established and balanced continuously. It's a constant thing. Because you want to get away from the stresses of sexual influences and this and that. And this is how you do it. Why? To self-preserve yourself so you survive. In the future, when you have gotten out of the situation of possibly hurting or damaging yourself or somebody else, if you've gotten out of that mentality or whatever it is that was sexually influenced that could be damaging to yourself or others, once you're out of that and you're balanced enough to work on the solution, then get into working on the solution, which I have already in the book. Get to study it. So this is Insight64 is about that. It's about getting away from influences that is damaging to the self or another person. Because meanwhile, you just don't have the ability to solve it. You just don't have the mental capacity to go about solving it. Okay, this is insight69. Method 2 is basically from 69 to 72, the insights. I'm going to read it, then explain it. What should take place is the introduction. This is method 2. What should take place is the introduction of helpful information in early childhood before the misleading and addictive information has a chance to be presented to the child. That's the ideal situation. However, the child usually falls into the trap of dangerous misinformation and gets addicted to its pleasure and variegated, means different, data. When the helpful information arrives, it is often too late for it to have any have a significant effect. So this is basically saying the simple fact that what needs to happen is for the good, enriching information to reach the child before he is exposed to the misinformation. Hopefully from an adult describing to the child of appropriate age so that the child can understand using terminology that the child can understand, the parent will use to teach the child about manipulations and how not to fall for that. An example of that is parents, when they have the child go to school, before the child goes to school, the parent prepares the child by saying, look, when you go to school, some kids or adults might offer you cigarettes. And you don't want to take it because it's bad for your health. It does terrible damage to your health, and also they're trying to addict you. They might give it to you the first one for free, and then once you get addicted, you have to constantly get more and more, and you have to pay from your own money just to get this thing because you're addicted. You say this to your kids before they go to school so that they're prepared. We're talking about a kid of 5 years old who's learning this from the parent. I remember my mom told me this. She told me this in regards to cigarettes, drugs, and alcohol. All these 3 items, she said, it's the same thing. The drugs and the alcohol, at first they might offer you for free so that they get you addicted. And all this stuff is bad for you, bad for your health. Never did she say, don't take cigarettes. Don't you take this if somebody offers you this, don't you do that. No, she doesn't do that. If you do this to a child, it shocks the child. Disables the thinking process. You don't want your child to not think. You want them to think. And you don't shock them. If you shock them, they get the shock instead of the knowledge. You need to present the knowledge in a very calm, straightforward, informative manner to inform and educate your child so that the child becomes empowered. The child wants to know what is beneficial and what is good for them. Of course, and they will use it. Why would they not want to use it? And the child himself or herself will want to stay away from anything that's bad for them. All they need is information, to be told what is bad for you, what is good for you, and so they can use that information. So don't be shy about telling your kids about important things that they need to be wary of, so that they can prevent themselves from getting into the trouble of these kind of manipulations. Same with sex. Sexual misinformation is presented to children using all sorts of magazines, various sorts of magazines, videos, internet, this and that, stories of all sorts, books and whatever, all ways and forms, in various movies, so to addict the child, right? A lot of this stuff is provided for free. Why? Why is it provided for free? To get people addicted. Yes. to get people to people get a taste for it, get addicted to it. You know, at first they start out slow and go to deeper and deeper depravity, so that the person gets addicted, and then they have to pay out of their money to get more and more addictive information. So the child has to be prepared beforehand about sexual information as well. You don't have to be all blunt about it, but you can show the methods that is used, make them aware and understand how this stuff really works. I mean, you do that for advertising, right? You teach them about advertising. It's like you teach your kids about how not to be influenced by other kids. I remember my mom saying, if she repeated something to me that she heard from somebody else, how she was taught, I guess. So she said, if somebody jumps out of the window, will you jump out of the window with them? You know? So this is telling the child not to simply follow along what other people are doing. In other words, think for yourself. So the same thing with sexual misinformation. They present it in manipulative ways, and you want to have the child become aware, hey, that they trick people in manipulative ways, and these are the ways they trick you. Given some examples, right? So, like for example, you do the same with kids. Your kids, as far as they may, for smoking, you will tell them, okay, the tricks that they might use the kids to have you smoke. While you're teaching your kid, you say to them, okay, maybe the kids will tell you, smoke, come on and try it. It's really fun. It's really cool. So, it makes you real cool. It makes you sophisticated. It makes you intelligent. Makes you look older and stronger, more confident. Girls will be interested in you. Or for the girls, they might say, oh, you will look more confident if you smoke. So you teach the kids through examples of what they might use to trick the child. Oh, it's fun, blah, 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 blah. So in the same way, you want to teach them about the specifics of the techniques, which are non-sexual, the techniques using contrasts to impact the mind. The child needs to understand how the techniques works. When he's presented with the techniques, he notices them, spots it, and he goes, I see the trick here, and he's trying to impact my mind. Not impressed, Very good. So this was insight number 69. So often, but what often really happens is that kids don't get the information. Parents are too shy to talk about the subject, so they don't prepare the children. So this is what happens. About insight number 69. Let's see, it's a time. I wanted to mention that time has to be mentioned to kids as well. They have to be taught that when a person is focused on these sexual matters, which is actually misinformation and manipulative, tricky sexual information designed to addict them, that their time is wasted, and their time is their life. They need to realize the impact of that. While they're focused on this stuff, they're not doing their homework, they're not having fun, other kinds of fun, they're not learning things, they're not talking with men and women to learn about relationships that eventually would allow them to actually form a good relationship and decide on a good partner. They're not having any of that. They're not having anything of life, really, because they focus on this task, this sexual misinformation, which is artificially grabbing the attention of the mind and making them a slave. It's grabbing their time. It's grabbing their life. Their time is their life. They need to be conscious of that and not to waste their time. I mean, kids don't like to be bored. Oh, don't waste my time. Like when time out is one of the worst things, because a kid wants to be alive and do things, right? So a kid needs to understand that while engaged in a task, while engaged, the consciousness, whereas their thinking is grabbed, when their attention is grabbed, and by some artificial means, well, that's the same thing as wasting their time. They're not having fun, a true fun thing. They're being tricked into wasting their time, which is their life.